When we define rework in a game, it basically means it is an act to bring certain things up to a new standard, whether it is from a design standpoint or a power level standpoint, and this is no exception for Warframe as well. For most of the case, reworks are the good thing, but what I'm not a big fan of though is when the rework itself fails to accomplish a coherent design that follows what the frame is initially intended, concepts that clashes directly with the idea that is within. I specifically talk about Valkyr Rework and why the rework is just a catastrophical failure in design. And there will still be people who argue that Valkyr is not weak, which isn't even the problem I have with her, considering the current landscape of Warframe's balance and power creep. Valkyr's rework design fails to strike a coherent idea. DE clearly stated that they want her to make use of her armor, yet leaving a passive that is essentially all Valkyr talents but accessible for every other melee, making a playstyle that wants you to capitalize on armor, health, and healing pointless, destroying the identity of her talents while nerfing her too in the meantime. There is so much I can go over, but this is a video about a completely different frame. Speaking of, to get you informed and be on the same page, let's take a look at Oberon's kit and look at what his identity was and the playstyle that he aims for. Just a quick glance over Oberon's kit, everyone with a sliver of modding experience can tell that Oberon should thrive in tanking true health, from the help of armor and the healing that comes from his third. His second ability, Hallowed, also provides status immunity, further allowing him to tank better as detrimental statuses like slash and hit are no longer an issue. Not to mention that his third, Renewal, provides Oberon a maximum of 100% increase to his armor values, and it doubles for his teammates. I know, it seems weak, even inconsequential as well. I initially thought so too. However, this buff is now home to the second ever multiplicative armor buff, first being Ironclad Charge. Can be an amnestic video when Rhino isn't being mentioned somewhere, That's not all. Oberon's fourth also provides a flat increase upwards to 1000 armor, and it still can be pushed further by Hallowed Reckoning, playing even further into his identity of utilizing armor as a whole, just like what they did to Valkyr on Valkyr Rework. Even in his rework, they specifically buff his base armor to indicate that, quote-unquote, we want you to health tank on this frame, and it cannot get any more obvious than that. Smite is definitely more consistent now, with a bit of help from other sources of damage increase like raw or ability damage Archon shots to ensure that a one shot is reachable even after 215 power strength, aka the cap of 75% current health damage, removing any overguard and armor in the meantime. This rework clearly improves a lot about Oberon. It strengthens his health tanking aspect and also his team support and single target prowess, streamlining all the frictions that used to be in his kit and so on. As you can tell, this DE team definitely knows how to breathe new life into a frame that is clearly very weak in comparison. So why? Don't you realize something? I haven't talked about his passive. You know, in order for everything they are trying to aim their effort to crumble is actually very simple. DE had demonstrated that on Valkyr Rework by giving her a passive that provides invulnerability, making all her health tanking prowess pointless in comparison. A perfect example of clashing design. So what does his passive do? Picking up a health orb or a universal orb generates a righteous negation charge for Oberon and allies within affinity radius. Oberon and his allies each have individual caps of 3 righteous negation charges. What is this righteous negation charges, you may ask? If a player has a righteous negation charge, they are invulnerable to incoming damage. When incoming damage is blocked, one righteous negation charge is expended. If a player has multiple righteous negation charges, they will remain invulnerable and receive a small 0.25 second cooldown before an additional righteous negation charge can be depleted. If the damage removes their final righteous negation, players will be granted an additional 0.25 seconds of invulnerability. Man, I don't even need to say anything at this point. You know what to highlight here. Take a look. This is what the design director of Warframe, aka Pablo Alonso, said. How useful do you find Oberon's passive? I'm thinking of replacing it, since it has no synergies with his kit. Quote-unquote, companions receive plus 25% health, shield, and armor links. Oberon's own companion also receives 1 instant revive per mission. Don't you find it incredibly ironic and funny that the very design director of Warframe states that Oberon's passive quote-unquote has no synergies with his kit? Instead of no synergy, we got something that is the antithesis of Oberon's identity. What? We got AI generated ideas from Grok or ChatGPT on how to design Oberon's passive now? So what's the point of even trying to push the idea that Oberon as a frame who tanks through HP and provide HP related buffs to his team? Yeah, you do so much on trying to push the idea that quote-unquote Oberon is a health tank frame. Base armor increase, healing double when standing on grass, a very huge armor increase when set up properly, even additional armor gain through the use of his fourth, and it even drops health orb, all just to establish the fact that he should excel in health tanking. All that effort for what? Placeholders? The design team never learned their lesson, don't they? The only thing that even has quote-unquote synergy with it is the fact that his fourth provides a consistent 50% drop to health orb, which means that it is very easy to maintain his passive through spamming his fourth all over the place. Who could have thought that CC on top of an invulnerability gate build is just that good? Are we having not enough invulnerability methods? Why must there be a way of invulnerability in a frame's kit when its purpose is to withstand damage through health? Or is it just that someone is simply guilty about the fact that health as a whole just isn't that enticing, so that you gotta add a buzzword in to make it seem like a good rework, huh? There's just much to talk about. Let's dive in, shall we? So, what are the problems? Say now you are a random Oberon player. Now you're trying to spec into his health tanking playstyle. First of all, Arcane Blessing is a must because you want a large health pool. Second of all, huge amount of armor for obvious reasons, and also his tree is capable of doubling the total armor value for him. Speaking of, the best way of getting huge amounts of armor or health on Oberon is not through modding something like triple Umbral mods, but rather flat armor buffs, because his base armor isn't high enough to make modding any sort of percentage worthwhile. Which brings us to his fourth. His fourth provides a fixed 1k armor at max on top of the augment providing 300 base armor that is scalable, allowing you to hit great amount of armor value without forcing too much. Since his fourth also generates health orb, it directly helps the build up of Arcane Blessing too, while allowing something like health conversion to be a very viable choice too, allowing a maximum of 1350 armor. Remember that he gains Righteous Negation through health orbs. Because of how crucial his fourth is for Oberon, you inevitably had to interact with the goofy ass passive, which causes a situation that you sorta just rely on his passive to survive, instead of you actually letting your health taking damage and prove that it actually works. But you can't just say quote-unquote subsume his fourth out then, because that's a huge hit to his viability on health tanking as well. He himself had no additional way of gaining great flat armor increases. Building up Arcane Blessing become more troublesome. Health conversion just ain't that viable here anymore, and I lose the ability to armor strip to make him dish out damage better against armor units. Can you see the predicament he is in now? I can go health tanking builds, but all of a sudden, I'm also forced into a Mesmer Skin like build that isn't what I wanted. This is genuinely annoying because one cancels out the other, and you know who gets cancelled out in this case. If I am spamming his fourth to make sure that radiation is applied everywhere for some CCs on top of Reckoning itself and help generate health orbs for equilibrium at the same time, I better off just go with his passive instead. It leaves his tree dead in the water because armor and healing doesn't in any way interact with the invulnerability, nor prove to just be better than it, outside of committing a mod slot for Phoenix Renewal. Speaking of, for the most part, Oberon's augments are fine, unless we are specifically talking about these two right here. Both have completely different reasons that leaves me wondering a lot. starting off with Hallowed Eruption. Why is this augment not looked into yet, other than making it go from plus 100% duration to plus 200%? Is this some delusional in Warframe 2025? It doesn't have much meaningful use case still. The value to cost ratio is just not there, bro. Now, to address the elephant in the room, let's talk about Phoenix Renewal. Phoenix Renewal is essentially a free cheat death that heals your HP up to 100% with an additional 3 seconds invulnerability period every 60 seconds. Anyone who had at least a modicum of brain cells will tell you that this is good, but there's a reason that it is in one of my complaints. Is the dev team playing dumb here, or y'all didn't know that Well of Life exists? Sometimes I wonder, is the dev team being real here? Well of Life, or commonly known as Trinity's first ability, is essentially just Oberon's Hallowed Ground and Renewal combined. Outside of providing armor to their teammates and some radiation priming, Well of Life easily solos both of these two, even when they are combined together. Now you may think, that's not possible, you are coping hard right now. Let me do some comparison, shall we? First, by comparing Well of Life with Hallowed Ground, you can see that they are both static and can have 3 at the same time, while also provide status immunity to those who stands inside of it. But not only Well of Life is having a 5 meter base range more than Hallowed Ground, it also costs half the energy, and we haven't started getting into the real deal yet. I don't mind if an ability costs more energy if it is more effective, but in this case, it isn't. Comparing both their augments, should I even tell who's better in this case? Second, by comparing Well of Life with Renewal, it is not even close when it comes to healing, even if you pair it with Hallowed Ground. Should I also mention that you can have 3 at the same time and they actually stack? So you are looking at 300 health per second at base. I don't even want to mention that this ability has Deathgate inbuilt as well, and you know what's funny about it? If you manage to take little damage, you may think that you will just gain 5 second invulnerability period, but that is just half the truth. The game simply didn't tell you that it is 5 seconds per Well of Life casted. So if you had all 3 up while taking little damage, the invulnerability period isn't just 5 seconds. It is a staggering 15 seconds of invulnerability. An inbuilt Deathgate with 5 times the duration already makes it generally better than multiplicative armor buff because it is universally more applicable. And even if you aim to just health tank, I can even argue that the sheer amounts of healing easily makes it up even. And Pool of Life can easily supplement a set of 4 health orbs and 1 energy orb that scales with strength, edging over Renewal even more because not only it helps with your energy economy, it also benefits setups that requires health orb like Arcane Blessing, health conversion, etc. Hell, it even helps Oberon maintain those righteous negation stacks Lamau. Do you see how packed this ability is? This ability is also a quote-unquote subsumable to Helminth ability, which means that everyone can use it, with a downside being the Deathgate is now 120 seconds instead of 60. So now you understand why I am genuinely baffled that Phoenix Renewal isn't inbuilt, and I don't know what Nocro Shrooms DE must be on to think that this next nerf is somehow justifiable. Most of the time, I can understand why line of sight must be added for some abilities. Coverage is always the issue, and that happens a lot of time on great DPS abilities, famously being the nerf to Dante's Tragedy that all of a sudden cascade into a line of sight rework that make lots of line of sight required abilities more lenient. Your sacrifices won't be forgotten, Dante. Anyways, I think you can see where I'm going here. Line of sight is added to those ability that has too many coverage on their output. Is Reckoning an exceptional DPS tool? No. Hell no. Even after the damage buff, Reckoning is still pretty weak in terms of DPS. It is more of a CC tool that also armor strips, provide a total of 1000 armor and the ability to make health orb drop for 50% of the time on tag enemies. So why line of sight even? Not to mention that its base range is 15 meters only, and it's not even about nuking with it. Line of sight forces the coverage of his armor suite to be way worse than its competitors, and way worse CC prowess as well because of the aforementioned nerf. And his already not as good nuking prowess got way worse as well for some reason. For what? So, for everything that I have said within this entire section, the rework leaves his passive being turbo broken, his 1 getting much better for a single target tapper and a golden subsume for everyone as well, even with a diminished effect. His 4 got hit with a line of sight nerf, but still overall coming out positive, which leaves his 2 and 3 completely stranded because of his passive. This rework, if you want honest opinion from me, it is a catastrophical failure, not because he's weak, but killing his core identity and idea just to make him meta level. Not what a genuinely good rework really is, as you can see. So here's what I will try to suggest. Starting off, get this Mesmer Skin passive away from Oberon. It's disgusting, but still, credit where credit is due. The concept of righteous negation shows immense potential, so I think this should be kept and allowing it to be synergistic with his kit instead of anti-synergistic. My idea is something like this. Each stack of righteous negation grants 30% damage reduction to health up to 90% damage reduction. It's very simple. All this does is to play into Oberon's way of tanking more. Damage negation was never meant to be on Oberon. Smite remains untouched. It is perfect for what it is now. Although I really want to combine both his second and third together, but since either abilities are determined, I would like to just see another lift to their strength. For Hallowed Ground, it could honestly use a radiation damage debuff, with each radiation stacks lowering their resistance against radiation by a set 10% up to a set 100%, akin to a damage type weakness debuff. So imagine you are up against corrupted units. Radiation typically had a minus 50% damage against them, but with 10 radiation, you could see it being plus 50% instead. This helps playing into his kit's innate elements, but also his first ability augment that gives a base 100% radiation damage to your weapons, incentivizing a build that all in on direct damage. As for Hallowed Eruption, it's fine to keep the idea, but with a 10 meter base radius increase as compensation, and allows the final detonation damage to have a scale of 1:1 with strength and primes 10 radiation immediately on detonation. For Renewal, increase the healing to 100 instead and keep the 2 times value while standing on Hallowed Ground. Every 60 seconds, they are fully healed and immediately revive and be invulnerable for the next 5 seconds instead of 3 seconds. As for the augment, since Phoenix Renewal is now built in, the augment is now renamed to Energize. Picking up health orbs while under the effects of Renewal grants Oberon and his allies 5% movement speed for the next 5 seconds up to base 35% move speed. Gain additional attack speed increase on full health. Lastly, if you insist of keeping the line of sight on Reckoning, an additional base 5 meter can be added to Reckoning to make it so that you can somewhat make up for the line of sight through ease of investment, aka modding for less range and still able to have a good amount of range on it. Or you could just remove the line of sight requirement, you know. To be honest, even at this current version, Oberon is not weak. I don't think I have the will to always repeat myself again in the comment section. I can go with an Oberon passive build that spams only 4th ability, potentially with the augment. Pairing CCs with gaining methods like Righteous Negation is just very great. And Oberon can one-tap tons of units in-game with Smite 2 by investing in the right amounts of ability damage increased shards. Oberon is a great frame, but in return, you had to kill his whole identity for that. Once you are not considering his absolutely busted passive that pairs with his 4th, this current Oberon is still average. Most supports provide so much more in return and just have much more going on with them. It leaves Oberon in a spot where if you don't make use of his passive, he is kinda whatever. Not bad, but not amazing either. But if you make use of his passive, he is actually quite good because of how insane that passive is for everyone and how easy it is to maintain it. You can simply subsume off his 2 for anything else, put Phoenix Renewal and maybe Hallowed Reckoning and GG. That's why I simply despise the rework. Whoever in the team thinks that this rework is passable in any sort of sense should be ashamed of themselves. It doesn't elevate what Oberon should do more than anything else, but it's something that he shouldn't be very insane at. It's the one who gets elevated to a level never before. As always, design talk can only apply that much. It is something that you can pay attention to, but you are not obligated to value it as high as I am if you are not into game design. If you disagree with the idea, feel free. If you can relate, feel free as well. Anyways, see you all next time. Goodbye.